I'll start with a little bit of a story. It's a stolen story, but I don't have a reference. So I'm sure that it's eminently Googleable. But anyway, I think it'll kind of set us up. So I'd like you to imagine a foggy night at sea, and there's a private first class seaman who's on overnight watch duty, and he has his searchlight out, and he sees another light in the distance headed straight for them. So he signals with Morse code, please turn 15 degrees to starboard to avoid a collision. The light signals back to him, no, you turn 15 degrees to the starboard to avoid a collision. The seaman signals again, you must have got me wrong. I urge you to turn 15 degrees to the starboard to avoid a collision. The light signals back, no, it's you who are wrong. You turn 15 degrees. He feels like he's in over his head, and he goes and he wakes the captain. The captain comes upon the situation, sees the light headed straight for them, and signals, I'm a captain with over 30 years of naval experience. You listen to me now. You turn 15 degrees to the starboard. The light signals back, I'm a first class seaman, 3 months on the job. You turn 15 degrees to the starboard. The captain signals again, you don't understand. I have a 50-ton vessel headed your way. You turn 15 degrees to the starboard. The light signals back, you don't understand. I'm a lighthouse. And I think there's sort of this, like we all have pieces of advice, but there are some pieces of truth that I feel like God is the lighthouse, right? And
yes.
Except for the years of experience part, right? Like,
yes.
That he's the immovable mover. It's the light in the darkness. We think we know what's going on, but hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that, and it'll kind of illuminate what we're going to talk about. I also think it sets me up for point number one, and this is stolen also. I've heard it said several times the last couple of weeks. Same storm, different boats. Mm-hmm. And there's so many different scenarios for the men out there and women and families who are going to watch this. Some people are home, paid, on paid leave, and bored, right? And that their biggest challenge is finding things to do, and they're stir crazy, and they're feeling a spirit of rebelliousness, and they don't know what all the fuss is about, and they feel cooped up, caged in, and they talk a lot about civil liberties. Mm-hmm. Other folks are home, not paid, laid off, furloughed. I think the stats this week were 1 in 7 in Michigan are on unemployment. Yeah. 1 out of 7. So I'm sure there are men that are going to look at this who are unemployed, laid off, and are getting the runaround with unemployment, and the money is not coming in. And they're at home and they're absolutely restless, but for a very different reason. They're dying to make money to take care of their family. Mm-hmm. Other people are home and working and getting paid, and they're more busy than when they were at work. And you've got 2 income, double working marriages where now there's no childcare, and daycare centers and schools are closed. And so mom and dad are trying to justify their importance to their employers and rotate schedules, and everybody's working, and they have no idea what these posts on social media about are with making good use of the time and picking up projects and being creative. They don't have any of that, and they're going to bed more exhausted than they were when they were working in their place of employment. And then some folks, they have, I look at some high school and college kids where maybe the primary source of their anxiety and depression was a disjointed, overscheduled family. And now in this season, they are calmed down and settled. And there are some kids out there who are blooming, and they're closer to their parents than they ever were before. And they have family walks and family dinner time. And it's been really neat. to see the overscheduled stuff end. There's other families though who are dysfunctional and chaotic and combative, and now they're cooped up in the same house with each other, and they're more combative. And I think calls to the suicide hotline, the national one, they're up 800% in the last month. It's really scary. So it's hard if you think about like what are going to be the lighthouse moments of advice that we're going to talk about tonight, because man, are you a bored, frustrated family? Are you enjoying the family time? Are you scared? Are you worried? We didn't even talk about how some families are encountering COVID and they have ill relatives, and other people don't know anybody who has it yet. And it's really like the differentness in the experiences is so hard when it comes to like counseling people, leading people, supporting people, because everybody's experience of this is so varied. So yeah, same storm, but really different boats.
I think too, there's these people that have the immune, whatever immune deficiencies or suppressions that they have, and that added layer of stress when anyone in their household goes out or comes back in, and the frustrations they may feel for other people who are not as susceptible to this and how their actions can be. How do you think some of the language around this is impacting people when we use words like essential workers and non-essential? Do you think that plays into people's emotions or feelings, especially people who maybe they have a business and they're not able to do it, and they're on furlough or whatever it is right now, and how that might impact value and the dynamics that might play in someone in their home life right now?
Huge. Largely, and it feels like. So I'll give you one of my. I repeat myself a lot, but I've been saying to people that it feels like there are huge spiritual undertones, and there are also large political overtones to kind of how we sort out what happens here. So then, as soon as you get into like which states, which governors, which policies feel more protective or more punitive than others, it really starts to, you show your colors pretty quick, right? Yes. In terms of politics and religion, and again, I think that's what you're saying is that that's anxiety provoking, where everybody has a different, it crosses their path differently. And that is so unsettling. Even the fact that we do updates and press conferences and news releases multiple times a day, the fact that you get a new piece of information so often is unsettling, right? So I'll give you the opposite. Like I made the decision it was a shared decision. In March, I closed so I manage an office for Pine Rest. I'm an outpatient talk therapist. And then I managed the office. We made the decision to close all of our outpatient offices for the entire month of April. Okay. So we closed in April only during social distancing, before shelter in place was mandated. Right. So then when shelter in place came out, I was already sheltering in place, and it wasn't new information to me. And so it wasn't very unsettling. And then when shelter in place got extended, I was already out of my office for the whole month anyway. And so for me, it wasn't a new piece of information. But for people who have to make a new decision every 2 weeks or everywhere, like each one of those is sort of like a midterm or a final, like those are major moments. And I understand that that's the nature of the beast, right? Is that we get new information and we have to give new updates. But that is anxiety provoking and unsettling to people. And so that's a tough pattern.
When we have a bunch of these all in a row, or they build, I think I just think back to how sometimes there was multiple updates in the same day. And so I know we were making decisions in the morning that we were changing in the afternoon and then changing again in the evening. How does that then impact people and then when it comes to then being sheltered in place and being in a home environment where we're kind of locked down? Kind of impacts does that have that we should be aware of as followers of Christ?
It's I mean, that's where we talk about like how grace is at work, or how patient we're going to be, or bearing with one another. It's so difficult to pause that instant reaction, right? We all have a lot of like the Apostle Peter, who sort of blurts out and has a pretty quick reaction right away several times in the Bible, and it's tough for us to like sit, let marinate a little bit, pause, and then sort of formulate how we want to respond. And that, like, the cycle itself, it's like, even if you have to respond thoughtfully, the fact that you're responding thoughtfully so often speeds up the thing. And so be still and know that I'm God. So many proverbs are about controlling your tongue and having a calm, soothing word that that squelches conflict and arguments, and all of that has to do with the smartest, wisest person talks least and talks last, and those are tough patterns to emulate, because we feel like we want to have like Peter, right? Like, say it isn't so, and baptize me first, and wash my whole body, and cutting off ears, and like we want to have these sort of ways that we jump in and respond, and that's I think the Bible would say that the formula usually is last and least, tends to be the best pattern to follow, but that's against our wiring, so that's been tougher, I think, of late.
I think it can be especially impactful for men in the sense that we tend to feel these needs to lead and provide. And when a lot of these things are out of our control, we're trying to provide calm in our home. We're trying to lead. I think, it's families who have younger children, trying to explain social distancing to them when they're used to kids are terrible when it comes to personal space to begin with. And trying to navigate these things while still cultivating a house of peace rather than passing that anxiety on to others. And so this idea that we are all in the same storm, but we all have different boats. And then how does that then reveal different things in us, each experiences? And so what do you think about that looks like in each of so we're all in our same storm, but we're all in different boats. And what is that revealing as we're kind of experiencing this in each of our own lives?
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of like we can tell what color the toothpaste is when you squeeze the tube, and we can tell a lot about people when they get squeezed, right? Yeah. And so for some, I think some strengths have emerged, right? Like I talked about those overscheduled, disjointed families, and now they're having family time, and some sibling conflicts have actually gotten a little bit better. I think that's rarer. But I do think that some people have bloomed and they've become encouragers, and they've got more time, and they're getting things done, and it's carved out some neat devotional time for them. I think for the majority of folks, this has shed light on weaknesses, on secret sins, on struggles, on places that we go to for comfort that we didn't realize until that comfort was removed. Or until access to that comfort was not as easy, and then we become irritable because we're cut off from our coping skills, and so then I think it's been harder. The habits of whether that's soothing with food or screens or substances or images or what have you, all of those things have I know the alcohol consumption is up, suicide hotline stuff is up. I know I'm sure that the pornography business is making great strides in times like these. So all of these sort of bad habits and things we do to mask frustrations instead of dealing with them with Jesus. I think it's been harder for those. I think particularly of relationships where it's been, and it might have been sort of like unknown, right? Like the marriage or the relationship felt fine. but maybe it felt fine because you weren't around each other that much. And now that you're sort of on top of each other all the time, new annoyances have emerged that were otherwise sort of, mitigated and covered up. Yeah. I remember early in our marriage, everybody says like you should never wallpaper together. And we wallpapered a tiny bathroom, which is like an enclosed space. I don't turn around in there very well, and it's meticulous detail work. And we'd only been married for like a year or two, and we were fully in love and harmonious and no kids and full of coping skills and free time and all kinds of stuff. But man, wallpapering a tiny bathroom together was miserable. And it was awful. And there were tons of conflicts where I can only imagine if that's me, fine, wallpapering a tiny bathroom, and now we're talking about a worldwide pandemic and being at home for 6+ weeks and money and schedules are altered. I have tons of grace and understanding that these things are emerging, but it just makes sense, right? That this is a way to reveal those things that really need to get worked on. I thank the Lord that now is a great time. It almost feels like Jesus is queuing it up for us, right? Like,
yes,
here's some things for us to deal with, and he's teeing it up for each person sort of individually.
I think it's interesting because it's not like the slow, steady, flashlight that's kind of come to reveal dark areas. It's like this, because of so many things at once, it's almost this giant spotlight, and then all this on top of it, which is kind of a grace in itself, because I think sometimes we can hide in the shadows, like with a flashlight. It's not as bad as it seems, but when that big spotlight's on us and all the things have been stripped away and removed, and there's no hiding and there's no room for excuses anymore, that it's truly a very revealing time. And like you said, I think there's some really wonderful things that I see and I've heard happening, some real blessings in this where some strengths are being revealed, but there are so many areas of temptation that have been revealed through this, areas of weakness, clear areas of sin and dependency. And when I think about that, and I think about overall, it is a gift from God, because that means that he is going to be able to do some pruning. He's going to be doing some work on us. It's an opportunity for us to engage more deeply with God and to have some renewal. So when you think about that, we're in this situation. Hopefully it'll be easing, but there's still, some road ahead of us. What does that look like for us in this season then? So we've gotten to the point where at this point, most of us as stripped down as we're going to be, the spotlight's on us, the stress levels, we're kind of gotten out of the newness of this. And now we're living in this. What are some words of wisdom for how we as men, especially, but just as human beings, can embrace this season and, turn it into something, turn it into the blessing that the Lord intends for us in it?
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of times we're more accustomed to, big flash in the pan, like you were saying, spotlight kind of disasters, right? September 11, polar vortexes, right? Like sort of these really intense things that sort of shut down stuff or are catastrophic, but then sort of most of our dealing is with the aftermath, not like a protracted engagement with things. So I think like if we're going to do a Bible parallel, right? When Israel was in captivity in Egypt, there was all of there was the plagues, and then there's this really big Passover event, right? Where that is one night of unbelievable. It's an act of God, right? And they live through that night, and that's the Passover night. And then they escape from Egypt. And then they're saved again at the Red Sea. And then after that, then you have all of this wandering in the desert.
Yes.
And it's a completely different kind of a trial than, we're going to put blood on the doorpost and we're going to endure this incredibly traumatic single evening, or walk around for 40 years. And, like in the desert, I think if I'm going to take that and then sort of give words of wisdom, right? It's structure and variety. So there's structure that the families that are doing well during this kind of sheltering in place period of time are keeping some new structures. We had a lot of the old stuff with, going into our places of work and having our schedules and schools and practices and events. And so we had all this stuff that sort of like you did autopilot all the time. Choosing your way through the day. And Pastor Jim talked about this in one of his sort of daily devotionals a long time ago. Like making choices all day long is exhausting because autopilot has been taken away. If we can put back a little structure, they had manna every morning. And so then the instruction was wake up, gather your manna for that day. Don't take any extra unless it's, the day before the Sabbath and you can gather twice. But you do that every morning. So same thing for us. Get up, get ready, have some structure to your day, set a meal time, set a family walk time, set a couple other things so that you've got sort of these, lighthouse kind of times during the day to orient yourself, right? Because people are forgetting what day of the week it is. People are forgetting times of days. Because it's Blur's day today, right? Like it all just kind of goes together. The more structure you can add, and it doesn't have to be the way like the school day would go, like with a class bells and dismissals. But if we're going to do some devotional thing in the morning, there's going to be a family activity. Got to do some work from home. There's going to be quiet times in rooms that are. Or what have you, like we're going to do some chores. And if there's some of these orderings of our day, that helps because then it's not your 8:30 a.m. choice, your 9 o'clock choice, your 9:30 choice, your 10 a.m. choice. Like you'll be exhausted by lunchtime because you're choosing your way. The other thing though is variety, right? And the Israelites got quail. And so then when they had meat once a week, having a little bit of variety, that helps keep your brain from getting stale. So it does not have to be elaborate. Like don't overachieve and post it on social media. But my 10-year-old is learning card tricks. And so we watch YouTube and we try to learn some card tricks. Or we'll have a new family devotional time. After dinner, we'll watch the Calvary word for the day. And then we do some YouTube praise and worship concert videos. And we do some different ones every day and some oldies and goodies and kind of stick to it. But having a little bit of variety, if you want to do a project, do a project. But I mean, think smaller than that. Like learn how to juggle or read a different kind of book or, take a different walk. I mean, any of these little sort of moments of variety, what it does for your brain is it's invigorating because sort of we lost autopilot. So we need a little bit of structure. But then if we are always sort of on this kind of cruise control, mindless kind of just floating through the day, that's really dull. And so new stories, new activities, something tiny like juggling, card tricks, like little sort of thing. That's really exciting. And those little things, I love all these, like, let's draw with chalk on the sidewalk, or let's make a stained glass window in the window, or all these little like kid projects that are going around. That stuff's really fun because it's new. And a little bit of novelty goes a long way, right? They only had quail once a week. So it doesn't have to be, don't overachieve at this because then you'll wreck it. But just have fun with it and do a little bit of new. The other thing I would say, which is sort of, it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a war comparison.
Okay.
Right. I love the verse from Isaiah 50 that says that Jesus set his face like a flint. When he was entering Holy Week, there was a resolve about him. And he set his face like flint. So my kids were studying World War One, so I'm stealing this from them. So World War One was all trenches and trench warfare. And the British didn't think they would have to be in the trenches for very long. So they dug less elaborate trenches, reinforced them with wood, and sort of did, what they thought would work for a little bit. The Germans embraced the reality of trench warfare much sooner. So they poured concrete walls, they built underground bunkers, they ran electricity, and they had a much more comfortable trench experience. If you watch, I think there's a movie, 1917. If you watch that, you'll get a chance when he goes from the British trenches and he ends up in a German trench. He can't believe how nice it is. But the thing about the lesson in there is Jesus knew what was going to happen. And, in counseling, we call it radical acceptance. But he set his face like a flint. And this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to fight the reality of the moment. I'm going to embrace the reality of the moment. Right? And so look, we're probably going to be, whether we're sheltering in place or we're social distancing, May is probably cooked. So don't wait for May to be disappointed about that. There might be some new things added back in. I really pray that there are. But to think that there's going to be nothing in place in the month of May is foolish. So set your face like a flint. And what would concrete trenches mean for your family? So for me, I hung pictures in my basement because this is where I do my video therapy. And I thought I'm just going to be in my basement for a little bit, but no, I'm going to be down here for a while. So I put pictures on the wall because I'm staying. And so things like that, just kind of embracing the reality of what this is going to be. Then I think you're not fighting it, and you can free up God for what he wants to do. And so I have found that makes me so much more peaceful. Because this is what's going to be happening. This is what the Lord has decided is going to take place. He is not caught off guard by the coronavirus. The Lord is not thrown for a loop by the coronavirus. He has always been the God who decides how far the sea can go and no further. He put mountains where he's going to put them, and he has an end date for this virus. It does not look like the Lord has scheduled the end date for May. And so I'm going to be in my bunker. And I'm going to embrace this because this is what he has decided is scheduled for me. And I'm not going to fight that.
And I think that's a really great point. And I think there's even a step we can take it that not only did God see this coming and he's the one who controls all those things, he knew each person that he created, and he created us with this in mind. It's because he has something really great for us. And I love what you were saying about this. How do we kind of adjust into this by creating some structures or rhythms that we can kind of navigate, and then even creating, some fun activities or some different things. And I think that's helpful because it gives some identity. I was just thinking earlier tonight when my wife and I were putting our kids to bed, thinking about the stories that we're going to be out of this season and what type of story it's going to be. Kind of like when people, like you said, when we look back and we hear stories, like the move from 1917 and someone's telling the story of their experience, what are we going to fill our stories with? And what are we going to tell our kids, the little glimpses that they're going to remember? How are we going to fill in those pieces? And what is that going to look like? And so I think even ways especially for families with kids, ways you can even create even weekly traditions that can kind of put stabilizing points. So we've been doing like Taco Tuesday. And I think some identity to children in this season as well, when some things have shifted and changed. And I can see how that can be a blessing. And then what you were saying about the idea of setting our faces, I've been thinking about that a lot recently too, that, we may not be quite in the middle, but we're definitely not in the beginning anymore. We've gotten through that first, the newness of it, and we've been sheltered in place. Probably gonna be sheltered in place for a while, and then Lord willing, things will start to open up a little bit, and then more and more. But the reality that we won't be locked in our homes forever.
No.
And so I started to think about, well, at some point this is going to end, and I don't want to miss what the Lord has. I don't want to waste time we have left for God to do this work, or what time I have left. Because even in the hardship, there's some real blessings about being together with family, or even if you live in an apartment with a roommate, or even by yourself, there's some blessing that the Lord has created for keeping you where you are, and being able to discover that, or lean into that, or look for that. And how do I finish then this next part of this leg of the race well, with coming out of it with, positives, coming out with it with being able to tell good stories of how you embraced it. And I like that idea, that setting your face like Flint, the bunker analogy of embracing this part of the journey that we're in, and what that will look like for our time while we're in it, and then what that looks like for who we become through it, and ultimately then what do we look like as we start to exit this.
Yeah.
But those are some of the thoughts that I've been thinking about. How do I kind of, embrace this in a way to continue to excel? How do we take this last part of the season, or whatever this next portion of this season is, and excel in it?
Right.
So I think that idea of setting our face.
Yeah. I think the only other point I would add would be that Proverbs 11 talks about he who refreshes others will be refreshed.
Okay.
And so if we're going to embrace this, like you're talking about, it seems like the way to do it is to be a light in a dark place. And that is going to look different for all sorts of people in different situations. Mm-hmm. It could be as simple as if you have an email to send at work, or you have a phone call to make, and normally we would just sort of do the business of that message. Mm-hmm. If you add 2 sentences and you say, how are you doing? And how are you guys holding up? And what's going on over there? I can't tell you how many 2-minute phone calls have been 12-minute phone calls. Mm-hmm. Or I'll send a business email to a person I don't even know at a company, and we're just sort of trading necessary data. But when I say, how are you holding up, and how's it going over there? And what do you guys need? I get paragraphs back. Or maybe if someone else says something that you really enjoy that blesses you, and you pass it on to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I was in one of these, everybody's doing all these Zoom meetings.
That's right.
I was in a Zoom meeting, and one of my clients shared an interesting piece of information. And so then I quoted him to my colleagues. And then after the meeting, 2 of them emailed me individually and said, oh man, it means so much when you shared little things that you hear from other people. Like, people are starved for good news. Yeah. And so if you pass on a little piece of wisdom or an encouragement, if it's being joyful in your neighborhood, and I know everybody's trying to pick a wide berth when they walk past.
That's right.
Man, smile, have a little a lilt in your voice, and ask people how they're doing, and tell them that you'll pray for them, and have a great day, and God bless you, and stuff like. You would be amazed at how thirsty ground, right, just drinks up the rain.
Yes. Yeah.
People are waiting for stuff like this. Mm-hmm. We got a cul-de-sac in my neighborhood where I'm not in the cul-de-sac, but man, I'll walk down on Sundays. Sundays everybody's at the end of their driveway, so they're 20 feet apart. But they will sing songs and pray. That is awesome, and that was not my idea. And that's just me joining with another smart neighbor of mine who wants to do something cool. Passing on, great YouTube videos, or all these neat sort of compilation things that people are putting together, or great praise and worship songs, like forwarding on some stuff and encouragement thing. You would be amazed at he who refreshes others will be refreshed. Like the song says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. When you are doing good things for people and encouraging them, I'm amazed at how much better I feel. And I get jazzed up and I get energized, and it's fun to pass it on and to let people know that the Lord is still the Lord and he's still good. And I have an encouraging word for you. And that's been really neat to see. And, if you're in the drive-thru, and I know there's a lot of this pay it forward going around where people pay for the people behind them, or go into a restaurant and leave $100 and say the next 3 orders are on us, or however it goes. Those kind of things, that's happening all over the place. It's super fun to be a part of that. And that seems to be one of the other things that the Lord is up to. And that we're all finding creative ways to refresh other people, but you'll be amazed at how much more refreshing it'll be for you. So getting your kids involved, getting families involved. If you live alone, it's a way to get involved. But find ways to encourage people and refresh them, or ask them how they're doing. That has been, I've been amazed the last couple of weeks, just how joyful that's been for me. Different than how I thought I would feel.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the nice thing is there's something for everyone to do. I can leave a note for a neighbor. I can, get some groceries. Like you said, I can leave a tip, extra tip. We know that a lot of people are in hard times right now. And so, but even those simple things, we have, some of us, like you said, have more time. Some of us don't, but handwritten notes, phone calls. I think a big thing too is listening. And noticed, and I really liked how you said this about just taking the time to kind of ask people. And then there's that willingness to listen. It seems that all these maybe barriers and walls that people had built up and kind of distanced themselves, where we were just maybe more polite. So you would put in your, even if you put that email, 8 weeks ago, how are you guys doing down there? It put it like, oh, we're doing well. Thanks for asking. But you put paragraphs back. And I think there's this openness that people have, a vulnerability that people are willing to share. And I know one of the things that I've tried to do is take a little bit more, especially people who are the ones I come in contact. I'm not coming in contact with frontline workers in the medical field, but the people that are working in grocery stores and those, service places and some of the food places, taking extra time to thank them for what they're doing. And it's just seeing the joy it brings to them, or the sincere sense of value that they're getting from this, and the appreciation for what they're doing. It is so rewarding to you to see you bestilling meaning and value in other people's lives and blessing them. And I think that's a great reminder for us. I've been reading through Genesis, and the whole story of Abraham and the families after that. We have been blessed in order to be a blessing to others.
Oh, amen.
For those ways that we can do that. So it's a great, encouraging word for us.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. I mean, that's totally true. Yeah.
And I love what you were saying too, that we're going to find that it's actually soul filling for us as well.
Yeah.
And in which we all need in this season. And so it's neat how God has created us to work that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's part of your spiritual DNA, right? Mm-hmm. That it's always meant to go through us to somebody else. It's never just meant to be kind of my own personal pipeline to the Lord, and that's kind of it. It's always meant, part of blessing, right, is breaking, right? We bless bread and then we break it. And so you break it so you can share it. And I think a lot of us are sort of broken already. And so then being able to bless people and take a little time, break your schedule, break your wallet, break the agenda, and then bless some people with that. Love those Abraham stories, right? It's all about hospitality.
I think it's a great opportunity for us to build further faith, and also to demonstrate what it can look like as believers to have peace, because that is the ultimate goal, that we do want people to see through whatever generosity and blessing that we're doing, to see through that up to our Heavenly Father. And so, which I think all of this has been so fantastic and encouraging, but it's that reminder that we need to be connected to the vine. We need to have that underlying relationship with God and continue to nurture that to empower us in all of these things, so that it doesn't just become going through motions.
Right.
full sense of out. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You can't give what you ain't got. So if it's all in your own strength, then you run dry. Right. And so that's why Jesus always talks about us remaining in him. Right. Like that's the pipeline. And otherwise it's sort of meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, this has been so encouraging and helpful. And I think it's really going to help men and all who this video reaches just to continue to keep our eyes on Jesus, how to think about the challenges that we're facing and embrace them, and then the ways that we can be encouraged to live during this season. So thank you for joining us tonight. And for all of our men at Calvary and anyone else who sees this video, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to leave a comment below of maybe with something that blessed you or really stood out to you from this conversation that we've had, we'd love just to, it's one way that we can pass that blessing on to others and bring encouragement to others as they hear what blessed you, that might highlight it even more for them. But also share some of the things that have been really helpful for you, some ways that you've been able just to see God's blessing in this season, or ways that you've been able to maybe set some rhythms in your family, some of the things that you've been doing. We can share those things, and that's a way for us to help one another through this season and to really be able to bless God through this. So I thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you.
We just pray that the Lord would be with you and bless you as you make his light shine through this world.
All right. Thank you much. God bless you.
All right. God bless you too.
Hey.